Okay, so we are continuing our series called The Greatest Story Ever Told. In it, we basically asked ourselves a question. If in 12 weeks we went through the entire Bible, what would it look like? Okay, we tend to read the Bible episodically, like we might watch SpongeBob, right? You never need to watch the previous episode of SpongeBob in order to understand what is going on in the next episode of SpongeBob, right? Characters don't really die. There's not like a love interest growing, right? Like some other sitcoms might have. SpongeBob is, you watch Krusty Krab Pizza, then you watch, Band Geeks. You just watch, it doesn't matter what you do. Every time you watch, you're like, I know exactly what's going on, right? Boating School, or any of the other episodes. You're not like, oh crap, I missed last week, now I don't know what's going on. It's like, okay, it's a sponge that lives in a pineapple under the sea, and there's Patrick, he never knows what he's doing. There's no character development that happens. They're static, they're just always dumb, okay? But very funny, I'm gonna give you that one. Or Rip Pants, that might be my favorite song. It's a good one, it's a good one. I had a series in my life where I ripped my pants too often also, taking out the SpongeBob. And thankfully, Larry the Lobster set me straight. So, Larry's kind of a jerk, but that's neither here nor there. So, but that's how we read the Bible sometimes. Well, I don't need to read what's before it in order to understand what's going on here. I don't need to understand what happened then in order to understand what happens here. Well, that's not true. The Bible is written in such a way that one plays off the next, and one assumes that you know what was before it, and it all is one consistent storyline, okay? Like very different TV shows that you might have seen. Like maybe Friends is a little bit more that way, or Breaking Bad, or The Walking Dead. You can't watch one episode and the next one, and then 2 years later be like, I know what's going on. You have no clue, right? All of a sudden, everybody's a zombie, okay? So we are going to continue this. Last week, Stephen talked about the Last Supper, or the Lord's Supper. Today, we are talking about the betrayal of Jesus. So if you have your Bible open to Luke chapter 22, that's where we're going to begin. Just to give you guys a roadmap of what's happening today, we will start with looking at a little bit of a history and prophecy of the betrayal itself, that a man named Zechariah actually foretold this event 6 centuries before it actually occurs. So 6 centuries before Jesus is even born, a man named Zechariah has already etched it, and he's already set it in place, and teachers of the law are already teaching it, and then we see a fulfillment of it. Now that Jesus came and was able to predict these different things, but he fulfilled it because he was the Messiah they've been waiting for. And Zechariah writes about this 500 years prior, almost 600 years prior to Jesus even being born. So we'll watch how a man says, here's what's going to happen. God fulfills that prophecy. Jesus does as he comes into the world. Luke chapter 22 begins like this. Now the feast of unleavened bread called the Passover was approaching. Stop. Okay, so right there, the Bible just told us, it used jargon. Anytime the Bible uses jargon, or it's kind of like a colloquialism, it's a phrase that you don't see anywhere else. Okay? The Bible is assuming you know what's going on. So when it says, now it's time for the feast of the Passover, it assumes you already know what the Passover is. Now what the Passover was thousands of years prior, about a couple thousand years prior to this, there's a man named Moses who God told to let his people go. Maybe you've seen Exodus, Gods and Kings, the Prince of Egypt. It's the story of this guy named Moses. Moses goes up to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. Pharaoh says, no. So God says, well, I'm going to cause plagues to happen on Egypt. So there's a plague of blood where all the water in the nation turns to blood. There's frogs, there's flies, there's locusts, there's there's boils, there's death of the livestock. The last one is, God says, if Pharaoh doesn't let my people go, I'm going to cause every firstborn male child in the nation of Egypt to die. I'm going to send an angel of death, and he is going to go, and he's going to kill every firstborn male in the nation of Egypt. But you don't have to have your kid die just because you live in Egypt. In fact, here's what you can do. You take a lamb, and you slaughter the lamb. Okay, you make a sacrifice for him, and then you take his blood, and you paint it over the lintel and doorpost of your house. So the lintel is up here, and the doorpost on the side. You do that, and when the angel of death comes to kill the firstborn in your household, he will see the blood, know that you have obeyed me and that you are my people, and then he will pass over the house. So you'll be safe, you'll be freed from it. So the Jews celebrated this date in history of the Passover. They called it the Feast of Passover, where they eat the same thing that the Jews did on that night thousands of years before, right? Lamb, wine, and unleavened bread. Unleavened bread means bread made without yeast. Why was it made without yeast? Because generally when you make bread for a big meal, you have to let it rise. The Jews didn't have time to let bread rise because they were leaving the next day, right? So all the bread was basically a cracker. So they would just bake it without yeast, so it just became like this cracker material. Okay, maybe you've heard of matzah. If you have Jewish friends, or you walk in the supermarket, it says matzah bread, or it's considered kosher, right? All this is what they use. The reason they do that because they're signifying that the Jews didn't have time to let their bread rise. So it's always that they use crackers. Okay, so have you ever taken communion? Communion, that's a funny word. Communion in big church, or maybe at another church that you've gone to, they either do grape juice or wine, and then you eat that terrible cracker cardboard thing. Well, you do that because the Jews didn't have bread. They had unleavened bread that night, so that's why you eat that cracker material. Okay, so if you've ever eaten that and you're like, this is terrible, why can't this church spring for some nice bread? Well, that's not the point. The point is that we're eating what they ate. Okay, that's the symbol of Passover. So this is what has occurred. Jesus is sitting down with his disciples to celebrate this event. Okay, so they're having this memoriam, just like any Jew would at this time of the year. Passover was approaching, and the chief priests and the teachers also in the Passover, I forgot to tell you this, everyone has to come back to Jerusalem during the Passover celebration, and you make sacrifices at the altar at the temple. Okay, so there's only one temple in all of the Jewish nation, and every Jew had to go there and make a sacrifice for their sins during the Passover celebration. So the general population of Israel at this point was probably anywhere from 200 to 300,000 people lived in this area. Okay, some say 100,000, some say 300,000. During the Passover celebration, there's about 1.5 million people in Jerusalem. Okay, so it's a walled city. So it's not like, well, they all spread out. It's like I've been to Israel a few times now, and you're already kind of like walking between people, and only 40,000 people live in Israel, in Jerusalem right now. Picture 1.3 million people. You're just like the whole time. It's like LA traffic, but on foot, right? Like, oh, this sucks. Okay, it is like that today in Israel, and I went in January this last time, and it was still packed. It wasn't even the tourist month. So this just goes to show that during the whole, Jesus makes his triumphal entry, and all the people are starting to rebel, or they're starting to cause an uprising because of what Jesus said. This is scary for Rome, who is in power at this time. Because there's not a normal amount of Jews there. There's now 1.3 million of them in this place. If they start an uprising, you are excluded. Okay? That's what you understand. Was approaching, the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus. For they were afraid of the people, right? The people. The people were starting to believe that this Jesus was God. And Jesus took the chief priests on head on. The chief priests are kind of like the pastors of the day. They controlled the church, per se. But they ended up making more rules than the church made, and they ended up taxing people higher, and they were kind of a corrupt group. So Jesus didn't like them at all. And since Jesus didn't like them, and Jesus' followers were gaining power, the chief priests were afraid, if this guy tells his people to come kill us, they're going to do it. And there's 1.3 million of them. So the chief priests think, we need to kill this guy as soon as possible. Looking for a way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. Why are they delighted? Because they might have just gotten their lives saved. Okay? Judas consented, and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. Okay? So here's the situation that we have. Judas, as we find out all throughout Scripture, the New Testament, that Judas is not a good guy. Okay? In the book of John, chapter 12, we see Judas, this woman comes and she pours this expensive perfume on Jesus' feet. It's a symbol of his lordship and that he is king to her. And then she uses her hair and she washes it. So she uses this delicate thing, this hair that has always been kind of a symbol of beauty and even fertility back in that day. And she uses this expensive oil. It would cost 300 denarii. That's months and months of wages. She just pours it all out on Jesus' feet. Why? Because in her brain, this is God. You would pour out expensive oil on God. Therefore, why wouldn't you pour it out on Jesus? Well, Judas steps up, and he's the treasurer of the group of 12, and he goes, what the heck are you doing pouring out that oil? That's ridiculous. You could have sold that and given the money to the poor. And Jesus kind of rebukes Judas, and he's like, no, listen. When God is in your presence, you do whatever it takes to show your reverence to Him. Like, that's God. If you sold the money and gave it to the poor, it would be an act on their behalf that showed your obedience to God. But what can show obedience to God greater than giving Him Himself this due reverence? And then in a little parenthetical it says, BT dubs, the reason Judas wanted this is because he wanted the woman to sell the perfume so that she gave money to Jesus and His followers, who then were supposed to give to the poor. But we find out in that little parenthetical that Judas had been stealing from the offering that Jesus and His disciples were collecting, which was supposed to be going to the poor as they traveled around. They were stealing from it. So we find out Judas is crooked. Judas is so crooked that when someone comes and says, we're looking for a way to betray Jesus, we know this. We know that Judas did not see Jesus as God. So Judas wasn't a believer. Was he one of His disciples? Yeah, but he wasn't a believer. Why? If he was a believer, who in their right mind would betray God? He didn't see it as betraying God. He saw it as betraying a man. Betraying a man who probably had some supernatural powers, but definitely wasn't God. So Judas was not a believer. Which is why in verse 3 when it says Satan entered Judas, there were some great questions last night after I taught this going, but I thought you said that Satan couldn't enter into believers because believers are filled with the Holy Spirit. Two things. Number one, this is before the Pentecost, so the Holy Spirit doesn't dwell in people yet. And two, Judas wasn't a believer. We find that out in a number of different ways. Number one, Satan was able to enter him. Number two, he handed over Jesus, so he didn't think he was God. Number three, Acts calls him the son of perdition. Perdition is another word for hell. Calls Judas the son of hell, which, that's a great term. That's so scary. I didn't know what was going on. You dropped something. It's okay, it was your birthday last week. So, he's called the son of perdition. So we find out that Judas ends up going to hell. Now, people go, well, he went to hell because he killed himself. Not true. He went to hell because he betrayed Jesus. Not true. He went to hell because he didn't think Jesus was God. Which is essential for us. John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father but through me. If you don't believe that Jesus is God, you don't get to heaven. So Judas didn't believe that. That's why he was in hell. Not because he betrayed Him or because he committed suicide. Okay, some people will use that as an excuse. They're like, well, everyone who commits suicide goes to hell. Look, Judas committed suicide, he went to hell. Bullcrap. Okay, don't believe that. Not true. Right? Even if your great-grandma who's old school tells you she's wrong. Okay? Don't even tell her she's wrong unless you tell her it was from you, because I don't want some grandma coming in and being like, why? I'll be like, listen, Grandma. That's all I'll say. So we're going to look a little bit at the prophecy of this. So all these events that occurred, every time it's written in Scripture, from 4 different accounts of different people, it's all fulfilling something. Like I said, six centuries prior, a man named Zechariah is speaking with God, and God says, by the way, when I send my son, here's how you're going to know it's my son. Here's how he's going to get betrayed. If you guys have your Bible, open to Zechariah chapter 11, verse 12 and 13. So it's easier to remember Zechariah 11:12. That's where we are. Zechariah is really close to the end of the Old Testament. So it's the second to last book of the Old Testament. Zechariah chapter 11. Kind of hard to find. It's a small book. So if you guys need help with it, with your table of contents in the front, that's an easy way to find it. You can look it up on your iPhone if you'd rather do that, or share with a neighbor if you have a really hard time doing it. So Zechariah is the name at the top of your page. Big number 11, and then after the big number 11, there's tiny little numbers. Look for the tiny number 12. Actually, we're starting at verse 10, just to give you a little context. So this is a man named Zechariah. He's a prophet. Okay, so right here the prophet is prophesying. He's telling the future. Okay, so God gives him this vision, and here's what he says. Zechariah speaking. Then I took my staff called favor and broke it, revoking the covenant I made with all the nations. It was revoked on that day, and so the afflicted of the flock who were watching me knew it was the word of the Lord. Okay? I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price at which they priced me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord to the potter. Okay, so with that being said, you're like, what the heck is this guy talking about? If you open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 26, this is back to the right, 2 books to the right, big number 26. We're using our Bibles a lot, I know. Dang it, why are we using the Bible so much? Why does God want to speak to me so much? He's so annoying sometimes when he wants to speak to me. Matthew chapter 26. Beginning at verse 15. I really think it's important for us to get the historical context of stuff. Right? So we don't read it episodically. That's the whole point of the series that we're doing. Okay, so it all ties in. 26, beginning at verse 14, says this. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, Iscariot means he's from a land called Kerioth. Okay, so you can go there today. I've been there before. It's called Kerioth. So Iscariot means he's from Kerioth. Okay, Judas from Kerioth. Went to the chief priests, the group that was looking for a way to betray Jesus, and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?" This fulfills a prophecy in Zechariah. In Zechariah, it says that they're going to haggle back and forth. There's going to be a haggling of a price on what Jesus cost to Judas. Right here we see Judas going, "What will you give me?" He's starting to haggle. Continuing. So they counted for him 30 silver coins, or 30 pieces of silver, just like it says in the book of Zechariah. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Later on, what we are going to find out is right after, actually, you guys can just turn there. Turn to chapter 27. So it's just probably one page or on the right side of your page or one page to the right. Mine's titled Judas Hangs Himself. Okay, which is a fun way to title something. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people came to the decision to put Jesus to death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 coins of silver to the chief priests and the elders. "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." Look at what Judas says right here. He doesn't say, "I have sinned, for I have betrayed the Son of God." He doesn't think to himself that he's betrayed God. He thinks Jesus he ends up getting put on trial and he gets condemned for blasphemy. He gets condemned and Judas says, no, he was wrongfully accused. He doesn't say, I shouldn't have done this because he was God. So he still is not a believer. "What is that to us?" the chief priest replied. "That's your responsibility." So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. That's just like it says in the book of Zechariah. In the book of Zechariah, it says that he's going to return it to the temple. That word temple means the holy place where the chief priests were. So Judas wouldn't have been able to enter this place. He would have stood on the outside of it, and that's why he had to throw it. He probably went to hand it to them, but he couldn't walk in. There was this place where civilians that weren't priests couldn't go. So he stood on the outside like, "Take the money. Take it. I don't want it anymore. I betrayed innocent blood. Take it." And they go, "That's not my fault. It's not our responsibility." It says then he took it and he throws it at them. Okay, because he couldn't enter. Continuing. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. To this day. That what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. So there's another prophet named Jeremiah who wrote, "Then they took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded them." Which is what Zechariah says. Okay, it's cast into the hand of the potter. So they end up buying the potter's field with it. So all the stuff that was written about 500, 600 years before is now coming true in the betrayal of Jesus. This man named Judas. Now that we look at the historical context of the betrayal, understanding how much it fulfilled, we're going to look at one more piece, and then we're going to dive into what this means to us today. The price itself. 30 pieces of silver. If you have your Bibles, I know, turn to Exodus chapter 21. So that is the second book in your Bible. So go all the way back to the cover and go 2 books in. You go to Exodus chapter 21. Exodus chapter 21. Okay? Now, what's up with this 30 pieces of silver? What does this constitute? How much is this worth? Okay? It kind of varies in different arguments on how much this was worth. Some people think it was about 3 months' pay. Some people would say about 7 weeks' pay. But regardless, it's a sum of money that would have been alluring to someone who was about to find a new job. Okay? Judas was in the market for a new job, right? His leader was getting killed. So he goes, oh, I got 3 months. 3 months salary to go find a new job. Right? It starts to make sense a little bit. But this dollar amount is significant. This 30 pieces of silver is significant. In Exodus chapter 21, there is law given by Moses telling people how to interact with each other in the camp of Israel. So he goes through all this stuff. Hey, if someone kills their neighbor, here's what you have to do. If someone commits adultery, here's what you should do. If someone, they had laws of cleanliness too, because people didn't understand germs and bacteria and other stuff like that. I was talking to someone last night, and part of Mosaic law is you're going to circumcise the baby boys, but don't do it until the 8th day, right? And so we're always like, people that day were like, why do we have to wait 8 days? Well, modern medicine catches up, and we learn in the 21st century, although this is written thousands of years before this happens, guess when the blood of a baby begins to plate and coagulate? 8 days after they're born. We didn't understand this. He just said, wait 8 days. Well, now, that's exactly what it is. On the 8th day, or the 7th day of a baby's life, its blood begins to be able to coagulate. Otherwise, if you cut a baby on the 1st day or something else like that, they're almost hemophilic, which means they'll just keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, probably to their death. Jesus said, don't circumcise on the 1st day. It'll end in disaster. Circumcise on the 8th day and you'll be fine. Okay? Again, modern medicine has to catch up to this. Even people in the 1st century, when they're rewriting this book, they're like, why 8 days? That doesn't make any sense. Now we know. One of these is how to treat servants in Exodus 21, beginning at verse 28. This is kind of a funny thing because we don't talk about this stuff often, but here it is. If a bull gores a woman, so to gore someone, it means the bull runs its tusks, its horns, tusks, horn tusks, tusks. Tusks is like here, horns. Yeah, but elephant has tusks. Yeah, don't grab a bull by the horns. We'll call them horns. So I think tusks is the wrong word. If a bull gores a man or a woman to death, the bull must be stoned to death. How long does that process take? I don't even know. How long does it take to stone a bull to death? And who wants to do that? You want that bull to be well locked up. Comes and kills you. Now we got to stone him to death twice. And its meat must not be eaten, but the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of goring, habit is a funny word, if it does it often, and the owner has been warned but has not kept it penned up, and it kills a man or woman, the bull must be stoned to death, and the owner must also be put to death. However, this however is the caveat. It says, but there's a payment that can be made to save the life of the one who commits the wrong. The one who commits the wrong is, even though they were told that this will lead to their death, I am going to do it anyway. Even though I'm told, if you leave your bull out, it has a history of killing people, it'll probably do it again. If that person blatantly goes, you know what, no, I'm going to do things my way, and that bull ends up goring and killing somebody, guess who's held responsible? I am. I'm responsible for that sin. But there's a price that can be paid to the person's parents or to the person themselves, if they make it, they gore someone, right? In order to have that sin forgiven. Continue in verse 29, 30. However, if payment is demanded of him, he may redeem his life by paying whatever is demanded. The law also applies if the bull gores a son or daughter. So this is a son or daughter servant. If the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 pieces of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull must be stoned to death. So the going rate in Hebrew culture for a dying servant is 30 pieces of silver. In Philippians chapter 2, Jesus says, I have become obedient to the point of death. I have become a servant to all people. The word in Greek right there is doulos. It's slave. I become a slave to the people. He became our slave that we would no longer be a slave to sin. And as the servant is going to approach his death, to his certain death, just like a gored slave, the redemption, the cost of that servant was 30 pieces of silver. Okay? That's the going rate for a suffering servant. So we see all throughout the Old Testament people predicting about what's going to happen during this small piece of the puzzle of the redemption story of Jesus, the betrayal. But now how does this apply to us? It applies to us with one simple question. All of us, me in particular, I love villainizing Judas, right? Sometimes I call people Judas. It's fun for me, okay? Right? If I'm playing like a board game, like Risk or Epic Duels or some crazy one, it's a good game. And I've made an alliance with somebody, and they betray me. I can't help it but call them Judas for 2 or 3 years afterwards. Right? If one of my buddies is like, yeah, dude, let's go see Star Wars together, and the next day I found out they went with another person, I'll be like, hey Judas, how's it going? And they'll go, I'm sorry. I'll be like, forget it. By the way, you owe me 30 pieces of silver, right? There's things that I like to do to people. Why? Why do I villainize Judas in my brain? Here's why I villainize Judas in my brain. When someone says the word Judas, here's what I think of. I figured this out last night while I was teaching. Have you guys ever seen Frosty the Snowman, the cartoon? Alright, so the bad guy in Frosty the Snowman, the magician with the rabbit in the hat, that's Judas to me. He's Judas. He's got like that, wow, and he's always like hopping, and he's a huge, wow, look, I'm a scary guy. That's Judas to me. Why? Why does Judas look like that? Because if Judas looks like that, wearing his little bowler cap and having a little rabbit in his hat and doing sneaky things and kind of always like, wow, like a 1920s New York reporter, hey, see, what's the news? Like, that's Judas. What? Because when Judas looks like that, he doesn't look like me. And that's what's terrifying, is when you actually read the story, here's what it would come up with. Judas is a man whose life is on the line. This guy, Jesus, who he follows, is about to be killed somehow. He knows that. He knows his time has come. Jesus predicted his own death. So Judas is then on the chopping block to die as well. Well, Judas thinks to himself, well, shoot, if he's going to die anyway, I might as well be the one who reaps some benefit from it. He's scared for his life. So he goes, you know what? I'm going to get in good with these people. Guys, I'm going to help you out. Don't kill me. I'm going to help you out. And Judas is given money for it. Why does Judas betray Jesus? He's given safety and money. I cannot, in my right conscience, say, I have not betrayed Jesus for less in my life. I have. I wish that every time I betrayed Jesus, I at least got money and safety. I don't even get that. 98% of the time when I betray Jesus, just because I'm standing somewhere and someone starts talking bad about Jesus or his church or his people, and I sit there and go, yeah, a bunch of morons. Jesus, yeah, right. Right? Now, as I've gotten older, I've become a lot more confident, especially with apologetics and stuff like that I have no problem kind of talking to people. Not in a weird way. The lady's not like, is that cash or credit? I'm like, you mean Jesus or hell? Let's talk, right? I don't do that crap. But if someone comes up and talks to me, I used to not even tell people that I was like a pastor. Because I was so afraid that they would just immediately be like, oh, judgy, oh, you're gonna... one time I was at someone's house. I'm not going to specify because they don't watch this, and then I'll be screwed. Someone's house for Christmas dinner, and they found out that I was a pastor, and there was like swearing and cursing and stuff like that, and people were always like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that." I'm like, why are you apologizing to me? I don't care. You swear all you want. It's between you and him. Like, that's not my problem. Sometimes I just want to swear back, and I'm like, no, it's freaking okay, but I want to say the actual word. I don't do that because I don't swear. But I get so tired of people being like, oh, you're weird because you're, you world. I hate that. And then it's like time to pray. They're like, okay, well, we got the reverend here. So I'm like, okay, stop. Like, I don't pray better than anybody else. It's not like God listens more to my prayers. Like, oh, you want the food to be blessed? Okay, fine. I thought she was going to pray and I was going to be like, no. Oh. What difference does it make? Doesn't make any difference. Sometimes instead of dealing with all that crap, I just go, oh, yeah, I work. They pay me to do it, and I work. What do? I do counseling. I do a lot of stuff like that in that field of study. Let's talk about something else. What do you do, right? I don't do that anymore, but for me, it was so much easier. But what was easier also is I knew that some people, knowing that I was a pastor, when crack hit the fan in their life, even though they'd be really churchy to me, that I would also be one of the first people in their phone they would call if something went wrong. Family member dies, who else are they going to call? Pastor. What do I do? What's going with them? What happens to them? What do I do? How do I pray? And I wish I could say in those moments, at least I was promised safety and money. But normally I'm just promised one less awkward conversation. That's what I betrayed Jesus for. That is the cost of Jesus to me sometimes. My question to you is this: what is the cost of Jesus for you in a year of 2016? We're a few days in and resolutions are starting. I want one of your resolutions, I'm going to challenge you to be this: may the name of Christ in your life become priceless. If I boil down every discussion that I've had with a student over the past however many years into 3 different categories of the reason that students betrayed Jesus. When I say betray Jesus, I mean it might be really simple. It might be really easy. You're sitting in a group of people and they start to gossip, and you decide you're going to join in. Okay? You know that is not what you're supposed to do. But in that moment, you've said, I am not going to, or I currently, in this moment, I'm not going to follow that whole way of doing life. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to be the guy that says, guys, we really shouldn't be talking about that. Or I don't want to be the guy that doesn't know the information because I do know it. And you justify it in your brain, you know? Well, it's true. It's still gossip. Well, they wouldn't find out anyway. It's still gossip. Okay? And we betray Jesus in those moments. Instead of doing what he says, we do what we want. Here are the 3 things. Number 1. The number 1 cost, I think, for high schoolers as we betray Jesus is number 1 is popularity. Or acceptance. Acceptance is probably a better word. We want to be accepted. Okay, here's the ironic thing, and I didn't say this last night, but I'm going to say it right now. Sometimes we ascribe the opposite. I said this last night, but the next thing I didn't say last night. We ascribe the opposite antidote for what the cure calls for. Okay, so we have these hurts and these wants and desires in our life. We end up chasing the opposite of what it takes to fulfill those things, and we do it ad nauseum. We do it over and over and over again until it makes you sick. That's what ad nauseum means. Okay, over and over and over again, and we don't get that it's not working. How many people do you know in your life that, maybe it's you, that are obsessed with self-image? Obsessed with it. And they also have the lowest self-esteem of anybody that you know. Why do those tie into each other? Why? Why do people who, when you talk to them, think that they're not good looking, have more selfies than anybody else? Because it's an obsession with self. And we think, well, if I don't feel good about myself, if I focus on self, I'll feel better about self. It's the opposite. If I'm obsessed with self and I have a terrible self-image, you want to fix your self-image and your self-respect and your self-confidence, focus on other people. Focus on other people. It's very simple. But we go, no, I'm going to keep focusing on me because I need more attention, and then I'll feel better about myself. No, you don't. Others need more attention. When you get into your brain that what's more important in your life than you looking good is helping other people, 2 things will happen. 1, you'll be more concerned with other people than yourself. Your self-image will skyrocket, and you'll actually become more attracted to people around you. There may be nothing more unattractive than someone who is self-obsessed. Without fail, the people who I've come across in my life who are obsessed with the way that they look have the most difficult time with the opposite gender, self-esteem, and compromising their morals as they get older. Without fail. We want to be accepted. Number 2 is comforts. We forget the whole Luke 14 thing where Jesus is calling his disciples and he says, if you want to be one of my disciples, here's what you need to do. Deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. What does it mean to deny yourself? It means at the pinnacle of your life, the goal of your life is no longer you. Okay? It's not how much you can make, how tall you can be, how strong you are, how successful, how many kids. All that crap is no longer number 1. Is it bad? No, but it's not number 1. That means what it means to deny yourself. And it says, take up your cross and follow me. When we say take up your cross, we think of the image of the cross. Some of you guys are probably wearing a cross necklace today. Or maybe you've got a cross in your clothing. Or you've got a cross tattooed on your backside, right? Huh? Some of us? Not me. But now we know. Okay. But this is, for the first century Jewish audience, this is a symbol of execution. It's today if we said, everyone take up your electric chair and follow me. Like, excuse me, what? Cross is cute for us. Oh, take up the cross. This was a symbol of Roman execution. You were humiliated, you were spit on, you were stripped naked, you were nailed to a tree, and you sat there until you died and suffocated to death. That's what you did. So what he was saying was, listen, anything in your life, get ready to die. Get ready to let it go. Yeah, that's what it's going to take to follow me. Sometimes it's going to cost you your life. Sometimes it's going to cost you comfort. That's number 2, comfort. Sometimes it's going to cost you comfort. Sometimes it's going to cost you safety. Sometimes it's going to cost you family. And Tessa brought up something last night to me, and it says this in the book of Luke as well. It says, if you want to follow me, be ready to hate your mother and your brother and your sister and your dad. Be ready to hate everyone in your family. That doesn't mean you just go around and start fights with people. It means this. It means if your mom goes, you stop following Jesus or you're not my son anymore, you need to be ready to go. Then I guess I'm not your son anymore. That's what it means to be ready to hate. That's how ready we should be to follow. We forget that. Number 3 is our vices. Vices. Okay? Here's what this looks like. Well, I get what it takes to follow Jesus, and I don't want to give that up in my life. I get what God calls me to, but I don't want to give that up in my life. You see, because it's really fun to be sleeping around with this person and that person. And I know that if I actually followed God, really, then I would feel guilty about it, and then I would probably feel like I should stop it, and I don't want to stop it. It's our vices. One of these categories should just be a standalone, should just be relationships. That's actually the number 1 thing that has people fall away. It's like they'll become 11, 12, and I won't see them for like 2 years. They're like, well, I got a boyfriend, and we broke up now, but things were really great, and they didn't really like the whole church thing, and they felt like you were kind of rude to them one time. I'm like, oh, what happened? Well, you were teaching, and you said that guys shouldn't be just using girls for their body, and he got really offended by that. And I'm like, sounds like a winner to me, right? And it happens all the time, but we'll talk about that in Shivs, which is in 2 weeks. We don't need to do that right now. Okay? Vices. Vices. I want to do what I want to do. And here's a great excuse that we use that really doesn't make sense. Everyone else is doing it. If you are a 17-year-old dude and you are sleeping with girls outside of marriage, the statistics are on your side. You can go, everyone else is doing it, and you're right. But here's something that you guys can write down. Sometimes the majority only means that all the fools are on the same side. Sometimes the word majority simply means that all of the fools are all on the same side. Did you just call everyone that sleeps with their boyfriend or girlfriend a fool? A fool means you're not practicing wisdom. So yes. And I'm not. God is. Okay, so don't be like, you called me a fool. God called you a fool. I'm just the messenger. I didn't edit the message. I didn't change the message. I just delivered the message. Okay? I'm like the UPS guy. I didn't put something in the box. I just gave you the box. Okay? It's foolish. What's case in point? Case in point. Early 20th century Germany. Middle 20th century Germany. The majority of people in the Nazi party wanted to kill Jews. If I shot a Jew, I could very easily go, everyone else is doing it. And you'd be like, well, if everyone else is doing it, then it's great. and kill the Jews. You would never do that. That's sick and twisted. But we use that for other things. Well, everyone else is sleeping. Well, everyone else is treating their parents. Well, everyone else is. When it comes to moralistic things, if you are doing what the majority of the world does, you're actually doing what is against Jesus. Because he's called us to be set apart. That's what the word holy means. In the book of Mark and Luke, it says that the doorway to heaven is narrow. The pathway to damnation and to hell is big. It's easy. The passageway to heaven is narrow. Infinitely inclusive, meaning anyone can get in. It's open to anybody. But that doesn't mean everyone chooses it. Most people will sit there with the majority and go, at least I was a quote-unquote good person. That's not what's going to work. It's our vices. The funny thing about vices is this. We tend to chase things that we think are going to fulfill our deepest needs and desires, and we end up further away from when we were when we started. I struggle with self-image, so I'm going to get a boyfriend. And that boyfriend, I only want him so he can make me feel good about myself. Or a girlfriend, make me feel good about myself. And then I'm going to make some compromises, and we're going to start sleeping. And then they break up with me. And guess where I find myself? When my first intonation in order to date them was to feel better about myself, I sleep with them, and then they break up with me. Guess how I feel? Worse about myself. Being human, we receive infinite truth in finite doses sometimes. What's the infinite truth? That God is the only thing that can fulfill. God is the only thing that can satisfy. But being human, we sometimes receive that in finite doses. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. Well, here's what I have left. I tried boys, that didn't work. So now I've got God, success, and money. I'm going to try success. I did it. I feel terrible about myself. Continuing. How about money? No. Finite doses until I finally reach the infinite truth, which is God is the only thing that will suffice. My challenge to you guys is this. In this year, may you make the one who made the priceless sacrifice for you priceless in your life. That's it. It's not walking around with the sandwich board on your chest being like, everybody repent and go to heaven. That's not what it's about. But in those moments where you know his name is on the line, will your cost of Christ be priceless? Or does he have a price tag? Whatever that price tag is in your life, know it and nullify it. If you know the price tag is this group of people, stop. If you know that his price tag is your popularity, curb it. Whatever it is, if we want to live life fully, his name must become priceless in our life. Let's pray. God, when you had the choice between giving up and carrying through with a priceless sacrifice, thank you for doing that for us. In our lives, when we trade in your name so that we're not uncomfortable or we're not an outcast or we're awkward, God, we're sorry for that. We want to become people where when your name is spoken or your name is brought up, that we would not surrender and we would not trade you in or betray you just so that we wouldn't feel those things. You never pray. Amen.